Despising his backers in the latest audio leak, Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is heard making offensive remarks about some Gulf countries despite their financial support. Could that affect how Gulf countries deal with Egypt from now on? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Fuli Batibo. Since he led a military coup in July 2013, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has relied heavily on donations from Gulf countries to keep Egypt's finances afloat. Well, now a Turkish television channel has broadcast what it says is a leaked conversation in which the Egyptian president is heard being dismissive of his Gulf backers. He also makes plans to demand money to be transferred directly into the accounts of the military, not the government.
Listen, tell him we need 10 to get deposited into the army's account. So what did I say?
10 in the army's account.
When I win the election, we will invest this money in the state. We will also need another 10 from United Arab Emirates and another 10 from Kuwait. We need to save a small portion of this money in the central bank so we can get its account settled until 2014. Why are you laughing?
They will faint.
Their money is like rice.
Well, the Egyptian Prime Minister Ibrahim Mahlab says the audio recording won't hurt Egyptian people's morale, but it could upset Gulf nations that gave Egypt billions of dollars in aid. Saudi Arabia was the first to announce an aid package back in July 2013. It offered Egypt $5 billion in bank deposits, oil products and cash. That was followed by the United Arab Emirates, which offered a $3 billion aid package, as well as Kuwait, which gave Egypt $4 billion worth of aid. Well, joining us now for a look at the impacts that these audio recordings may have on the relations between Egypt and Gulf Arab nations are our three guests. In Kuwait, Fahad al-Shami, president of the Gulf Peace and Security Forum. In Beirut, we have Joseph Keshishian, senior writer at Gulf News and author of several books, including Legal and Political Reforms in Saudi Arabia. And in London, Wafiq Mustafa, founder and chairman of the Conservative Arab Network. Gentlemen, thank you all for being on Inside Story. Fahad, if I may start with you in Kuwait City, do these revelations that President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi privately despises Gulf Arab leaders, do these revelations come as a surprise to you?
Thank you, Foley, for having me, and best regard to your guests. I think the relationship between Egypt and the GCC is an old relationship. Long mutual interest has been made. What we heard is a private discussion in a brainstorming session, raising all possibilities. I think this tape is mostly more than 1 year old. Yes, we have money like rice. He was right. Mm-hmm. We have $1.7 trillion as reserve. But we are very keen and very careful to invest this money wisely, because it's the money of the people, not the money of others.
Right.
And I think he could propose what he wish, but the decisions comes to the GCC cabinets or to the GCC leaders. I think this is part of struggle using the propaganda between Sisi opponents and against Sisi. We heard and we saw many leaks. The final answer, it will not affect the relationship.
But
yes,
Fahad,
people will talk about it.
Right.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned the money aspect, of course, but in this audio recording, we also hear the aide to Sisi, who he was speaking to, directly insult some of these leaders for instance, he insulted directly the leader of Qatar. So, I mean, Egypt, when it was reacting to this leak today, downplayed it, but didn't outright reject or deny it. So does it give it then more weight?
I think we carry a great respect for Prince Tamim. He is one of the GCC young leaders who was able to pull his country up heading to the future. It's not going to hurt him if he hear or if he watch something against him. His respect will be on a high level. Now, we should not also build our political relationship on a personal issues. I'll give you an example. Ronald Reagan was in a TV session and he think the camera is off. What he said, okay, I will destroy the Soviet Union now. I will push the nuclear button. And he was joking. It made a big boom in the media, but by the end, still a political relationship stand. I think this is part, as I told you, it's from a media campaign from the opponent or the opposition against Sisi. We will see more than that. I'm not defending a Sisi, but in international relations, you build your relations on interest, mutual interest. We think in Egypt, in Kuwait, Egypt is a big country, and we need to support this according to the mutual interest.
So you build your relations on mutual interests, you say, and not necessarily on personalities, on the leaders themselves. Let me get the view
personality
of Joseph.
is important sometimes in Gulf politics, but it's not a major thing.
Okay, let me get Joseph Kachishian's view in Beirut. Joseph, as Farhad mentioned there have been revelations recently. I mean, ever since the overthrow of Mohamed Morsi from power, we've seen a number of audio leaks involving the Egyptian president and his entourage. What do you make of the timing of this latest leak, just as we're seeing attempts to reconcile Egypt and other Gulf Arab countries, a rapprochement between Egypt and Qatar, for instance? What do you think the intention is here?
Well, at a time when everybody is spying on everybody else and everybody is listening to everyone else's conversation, this should not come as a surprise. But we should analyze this at two separate levels. On the one hand, obviously the conversation, if it proves to be correct, occurred. Therefore, it cannot be denied since there is evidence. But who leaked this information? Whose interest it was to actually make these tapes available to an opposition figure beaming out of Turkey that belongs to the Muslim Brotherhood?
Well,
that's
supporters of Sisi say that the leaks are doctored, the audio recordings are doctored by supporters of the former president, Mohamed Morsi.
Right, and that's why I put the caveat, since we don't really know the authenticity of these tapes. But that's one point. The second, and I think more important point, it indicates to me that General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, when he made this tape, or he participated in the conversation in mid or early July of 2013, obviously very new to power, even though he is an experienced man, served in Saudi Arabia as a military attaché, still lacked the finesse, the experience, if you would like, of dealing with the Arab world, Arab leaders. And I think this indicates that there was a learning process involved, which I'm sure everyone in Cairo today regrets, because this is serious and it should be taken seriously.
Wafiq, in London, there has been the suggestion that these leaks could be intentional, perhaps, on the part of the Egyptian government to remind basically Gulf Arab countries of Egypt's stance. Do you think this is credible, feasible?
I'm not sure if it's intentional from the government. It is what's clear. There has been infiltration of the government body. The leaks itself, which I have listened to last night in Arabic, it raises a huge concern. It is sheer contempt regarding the Arab leaders, and as well raises concern about the ability and the credibility of President Sisi and his government. the credibility inside Egypt and outside Egypt. It's very difficult to say how it's going to work out next few weeks, but it's actually looking at the broad picture in Egypt. Egypt going into a stage of becoming a police state. Was just last week a couple of hundred people or more were sentenced to death, and a couple of hundred young people were sentenced to around 10 years imprisonment. I think it's a lot of problems. It's not rosy road at all for Sisi or for Egypt at this stage. Particularly, listen to the tape. Okay. These people rule Egypt now. These people have got the keys for the country. If they talk like this, I can't see they will change, because they were in very high positions at the time.
Fahad, I see you smiling and shaking your head there. These leaks, of course, come a month ahead of a donor conference on Egypt, where key Gulf states are expected to attend next month, in fact, in Sharm el-Sheikh. Do you think these revelations will create a problem for Egypt ahead of this conference?
It might have effect on the people, on the street, on the general media in the Gulf. But I didn't hear, or I didn't see, or I did not participate in any other media regarding the tape, except Al Jazeera here.
So what are you suggesting?
I was in many I think it will catch the interest for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days. Then it will diminish. Because we know, I mean, the state leaders and state men and women in most of the GCC knows the struggle between the Muslim Brotherhood and the regime. We think we have taken a position to support Egypt and the people of Egypt. We think Abdel Fattah al-Sisi will move forward. He's fighting extremism. This extremism is creating a wall and preventing North Africa extremism and terrorism from coming to our countries. We think we have a mutual interest with Egypt on the long history, and I think people will attend, I mean, the leaders or the representative of those countries, I mean the GCC, will attend the Sharm el-Sheikh summit, and there will be private companies will pump money and even government project to support that.
Right.
Yes, we heard some warning from extremists and some threats, but I think this will continue. We think we should stand with Egypt until Egypt stands on its feet, and then we will have a democratic system on next March.
Joseph, do you agree with that? Do you agree with what Fahad is saying, that in the end the larger geostrategic interests will prevail and that these leaks are going to be forgotten, that at the Sharm el-Sheikh conference next month, basically, nobody's going to be talking about this?
Only partially do I agree with my good colleague from Kuwait. I think that in international relations, obviously, interests are above everything else. But diplomacy is also an art form, and you have to really behave in a certain way. There are certain words that cannot be used, must not be used. I am sure at Sharm el-Sheikh, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Abbas Kamal and all of these other advisors around him who allegedly participated in this conversation will actually hear an earful. They might even be taken to the woodshed. They might even be told that this is not the kind of behavior that Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, and other countries expect from an ally like Egypt. I don't think that we should really minimize the seriousness of this question. However, having said all of this, what I agree with Fahad is that it is important to really think about the consequences of this leak, trying to create a wedge, if you would like, between Abdel Fattah Sisi's government and the conservative Arab Gulf monarchies, because there is a new government, a new king in Saudi Arabia. There are changes that have occurred recently with a reconciliation with Qatar. Therefore, someone has an interest to derail this reconciliation that has taken place. So therefore, I think that a lot of individuals throughout the Gulf countries will be working very hard to figure out why this occurred, why this leak at this time, and what to do about preventing it in the future.
Right. Well, I do want to touch on the importance relationship with Saudi Arabia. And following the death of the King of Saudi Arabia, King Abdullah, Saudi Arabia's new King Salman led a major reshuffle, of course, of key government positions. And many believe that that could lead to a shift in the politics of the kingdom. For instance, Mohammed bin Nayef, the Saudi Interior Minister, was appointed Deputy Crown Prince, a position former King Abdullah is believed to have wanted for his son. The new king also gave his son, Mohammed, the Defense Ministry and made him head of the Royal Court, a position that is seen as a gatekeeper to the king, one of the most important positions in the Saudi government. So when you look at what's happening in Saudi Arabia right now, even though the new King Salman has promised continuity, we are seeing some changes. Do you think, Wafiq, in London, that the favourable status that Egypt had under the former King of Saudi Arabia, King Abdullah, will continue under this new leadership?
Oh, certainly it's not likely to be the same because the two kings have different approach to politics and to the Middle East turmoil. I could imagine that Saudi Arabia will continue to support Egypt. We'd be on the same level, would be in the same way, because we know there was a close relationship between King Abdullah and his team, his government, and the Sisi and the military in Egypt. I think it will be not easy, you know, because the military did not really deliver. If you see there is a collusion between military and judiciary in Egypt, on the ground they haven't got really firm foot in the ground in Egypt to be supported. And to be supported, they have to show they are inclusive and they're getting all people together. And so far, I can't see it.
Joseph, do you, on that same question, there has been the suggestion that the favorable status that President Sisi had under the reign of King Abdullah, the late king, will not continue under King Salman, that the king's new leadership, the current king's new leadership, is more open to the idea of reconciliation with the Muslim Brotherhood. Do you think that's likely to happen?
I think that's highly unlikely to occur. Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is not an unknown quantity. He served for many years as Egyptian military attaché in Riyadh. The leadership in Saudi Arabia know him very well. I think that King Salman is not going to turn over the keys of the kingdom to the Muslim Brotherhood and other extremists. I think that people who are making the argument that we're going to see a dramatic change in the policy of Saudi Arabia really are skirting the issue. There might be some tangential changes here and there because of the personality differences involved. But at the end of the day, I think that the interests of the kingdom must be taken into account above everything else. And Saudi Arabia has drawn the red line against extremists, and it cannot possibly have any kind of reconciliation with the Muslim Brotherhood. If that were to occur, we will see not only an epochal change, but we will see volcanoes bursting throughout Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries. That is far-fetched. That is impossible to even think about.
Okay, Fahad, do you agree with that? Is reconciliation with the Muslim Brotherhood out of the question? And also, what do you see as the potential changes in regional alliance brought about by the arrival of this new king in Saudi Arabia?
I think the policy of Saudi Arabia towards Egypt will not change. It might goes a little bit down on financing. But the Saudi knows they want Egypt strong because they want a strong neighbor. Strong and friendly neighbor is a good neighbor. This is number one. Number two, we might see some internal changes in the kingdom. Number three, I think why not? Why not we have a reconciliation and an agreement at least to get the society together and incorporate the Muslim Brotherhood. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said that once. So why not the Muslim Brotherhood? But as my friend Joseph said, he will not turn the key to the Muslim Brotherhood, definitely. But why not we have all the society group working together in a political settlement in Egypt, or at least to try and have a good start and flip the page on a new page of cooperation. Why not? Even in Kuwait now, we have some communications with the opposition, including the Muslim Brotherhood, or who represent them, to incorporate them and go to the next election. I think that is a wise, instead of just throwing everybody away, I think the best way is to put them under one canopy, and this is King Salman, and I think the Emir of Kuwait is going toward that. But the policy with Egypt will stand firm, no change.
Okay, we've heard your viewpoint on that. Let me ask Wafiq about what you just said there, about the possibility of seeing a return of the Muslim Brotherhood in the regional politics. Wafiq, in London, do you agree with what Fahad just said there? Could we see the Muslim Brotherhood make a comeback, being incorporated not just in Egyptian politics, as he suggests, but also in the region's politics?
Well, it seems to me in Egypt, if you have 40,000 people in prisons, about 1,500 people being sentenced to death, the dialogue, how it can start in such a situation, I think they got to be freed. Journalists got to be freed, for example. I mean, this is a big problem even to release 30 or 40 journalists, let alone 4,000 people. I think there's a collusion between judiciary and the military in fabricating evidence against Muslim Brotherhood. The trust has got to be there. Currently, there's no trust. Currently, there is a deep division in society, and I think it's a very big mistake, because Egyptian society is deeply divided, because Muslim Brotherhood is not a homogeneous group, as we know, and it's wrong to call them terrorists. It creates hate and create division, and actually break the trust inside the society. It's 90 million in Egypt, and they have several million supporters in Egypt. I am not from Muslim Brotherhood, but I think it's a very counterproductive way, and I don't know how he's going to resolve it. Particularly, he's got all the media against him, the intelligence into infiltrating social media. There's a huge problems inside Egypt, of course, not delivering in jobs, not delivering in democracy. Young people are very disenchanted with what happened over 4 years.
Right, there are indeed a lot of issues in Egypt. Joseph Kechichian, are you as optimistic as Fahad that, you know, we're not likely to see any changes in relations between Egypt and its Gulf Arab neighbors, that the financial support from Gulf countries will continue, and that we might even see a reintegration of the Muslim Brotherhood into Egyptian politics?
I'm afraid I'm not that optimistic. I think that there is no desire to start a conflict, obviously, and it is not the fact that people are opposed to the Muslim Brotherhood. They're not. It's a party like any other. It might be identified as a terrorist organization today by Saudi Arabia, by Egypt, by several other countries, but these things could change. The idea is not to be opposed to the Muslim Brotherhood. The idea is to be opposed to the extremist methods that the Muslim Brotherhood and other similar parties engage in to blow people up, whether it's Daesh in Syria or Iraq, or to get involved in acts of violence. That's what people oppose to. Now, the financial aspect might be worked out. Some kind of a deal could be reached. But I think at the end of the day, not just Egyptians, but all other Arab countries that deal with the Gulf states must really recreate the art form of diplomacy, which regrettably during the past 4 or 5 years has diminished considerably.
Okay, thank you very much for an interesting discussion, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. Fahad Al-Shilaimi in Kuwait City, Joseph Kechichian in Beirut, and Wafiq Mustafa in London. Thank you all. And thank you as well for